Good afternoon. We are very aware that we are the only thing standing between you and lunch. So hopefully this discussion will engage you and keep you going until the lunch hour. If I can go ahead and get the panelists to introduce themselves, then we'll go ahead and get started.
Hi, my name is Vincent. I work in Fairview International School. I'm the principal there. I used to be a psychiatrist. If you heard me, I spoke a little bit more about myself yesterday during my keynote. I've taught in education since 2009 in the CIE and in the IB programs as a MYP teacher and a DP teacher. I am, of course, a biology teacher. Thank you.
Hi, good day everyone. I'm Wynce from Axcel International School. Our mission is to connect the real world to our students. We focus on us beyond academic excellence. Us stands for attitude, skills, and knowledge. So we try to incorporate job skills like financial intelligence, creativity, innovations, pitching skills, and so forth into our curriculum. I was actually an investment banker before, fortunate enough to retire, and journeying into education as part of my second life now. I found that unfortunately, world has changed so fast. Unfortunately, education has not changed much. And private educations or private schools has been a premium sector before. So our hope is to make education to be affordable for everyone. Our tuition fees actually is less than $5,000 per year. So we hope that we could actually connect to more people. We started actually as a homeschool and then upgraded ourselves to be approved international schools in 2020. We started with 50 students and now we have about close to 600 students. Thank you.
Hello everybody. My name is David John. I'm the principal of Kingsgate International School, and I am a relatively new principal. This is my second year as principal of Kingsgate, and I've been a teacher for 11 years now. I've not too long removed. I'm actually still in the classroom for a couple of maths classes, and I'm hoping I can contribute something different in being such a new principal and how I've seen technology and game-based learning progress even from when I started and to how it is now. So I've got quite a lot to talk about on that subject. I'm excited to hear what everyone else has to say as well.
Thank you. And I'm Jessica Hale. I've been in international education for more than 20 years, now more than 10 years here in Malaysia. I am currently the principal at Oasis International School, located just down the road here from Putrajaya. And I was on the team that actually built that school from the ground up. So I've had the opportunity to build a whole ecosystem from building to technology to curriculum. We're an American-based school. We offer the US diploma, and we're highly infused with technology. So we have a 1-to-1 program, 2-to-1 program in the high school. So I was really excited to be able to moderate this topic and also to get a perspective from both a whole school and also a teacher's level. We've got an amazing experience on this panel. I'm looking forward to having this discussion. So as you notice, our topic is two-faceted, talking about game-based learning, which is very much a hot topic, in particular when we talk about artificial intelligence and the role of artificial intelligence in game-based learning, but also this idea of data-driven instruction. So we're gonna spend about half of the time talking about game-based learning and then kind of move into that idea of data-driven instructional practices. I think particularly at the principal level, we're really interested to see how our teachers can use varied instructional practices to really meet the needs of all of our learners. But I'm really interested in what the role data plays in that. Are we just choosing instructional practices because we like them and they seem fun and our kids are engaged, or really thinking about how they're learning meaningfully from those? But let's start with game-based learning. I'm curious, I'm gonna start general. I know my panelists have highlighted some questions they want to answer, but I wanted to start with a more general question. I'm curious, as a school leader, from more of a macro perspective, what role does game-based learning have in your schools? went once.
I'll start. So I think it's the age of Minecraft. I grew up with sticks. I grew up climbing trees. I grew up with mud in my face. I grew up with sliding, tackling in the rain. You can't do that anymore because we're all afraid of our kids getting sick, those precious little things. But the thing is, our children speak a different language. And I think the first step to understanding and getting down to their level and teaching them the way they need to be taught is to appreciate that they grow up in a game-based world. Now, we've kind of grown up in a game-based world. There's games everywhere as adults. It's just we don't see it as games. I mean, Lazada has coins and eggs games. So does Shopee. I mean, everybody uses those things. You got discounts and timer functions like before midnight things. These are all game-based mechanics. So I think from a leader's point of view, if we start with the pedagogy of a student-centered learning-based thinking, then one of the rules that we must obey is how do they think and how do they need us to speak to them? And if my child needs me to speak to him in a game, I will speak to him in a game. If he needs me to crawl on the floor to speak with him, I will speak with him on the floor because I need to go to where they are, not try to bring them up to where I am. That's how I begin the conversation with the game-based learning, at least. Oh, sorry.
Right. Maybe for my side, I will look at when we hired the teachers, we actually will tell the teachers that their role is not just a teachers. They are also a facilitators for all the different activities, whether it's actually online-based or offline-based. So we actually get our teachers to organize and facilitate all the various activities for our students. So they will need to be very innovative and dynamic when coming out with all these activities, obviously including game-based learning. So for us, that's the key culture we like to actually have in our school, where it starts from the teachers who look into game-based learnings to make students' learning a lot more engageable and fun. Thank you.
Before I go on to what we do in our school with game-based learning, if I think about when I first came across Kahoot, and I suppose everyone's aware of what that is, that was really the first one when I started my teaching back in Wales, and then when I came to Malaysia. I'd heard of Kahoot back home, but the children don't have laptops. Typically in UK schools, you go to a computer suite, but out here all the children have laptops, and can be the biggest problem in a school, but it's also very handy to have them be able to whip them out and then have a game of Kahoot at the end. And when I was shown by a Canadian colleague on how he used Kahoot in his lessons as just a consolidation tool, so I'm very thankful that that's how it was introduced to me and not how I see many teachers use it as a means of something to fill the time at the end of a lesson, but it can be that which is the most popular one, that, and I'd say Quizlet is the other one which is really, really popular. And I saw those as a way of consolidating learning at the end of a lesson, and also it could be a reward, but I wouldn't just find anyone, I'd make them. And I was shown how to make one first. I thought you had to make them. I didn't know you could use anyone else's at first. So it kind of taught me a lesson unknowingly. We use it. I had a staff meeting with many of our homeroom teachers and some of our core secondary teachers and asked them, how do you guys use it in your lessons? And typically, and it's probably popular across the whole of schools, is they do use these web-based games for, because it's purpose-built as a game. It's a product, so it's going to be really good. Otherwise, schools aren't going to be subscribed to it. And I got a list of all the game-based websites, programs they use: Prodigy, Quizlet, Kahoot, Bluekit is another big one. And then I actually got to asking them, how do you use game-based learning in just your general teaching? Pretend they didn't have laptops. And that's when I got some really good answers. So in subjects where you think, oh, what could it be difficult in? It could be difficult in higher level English literature, or something at pre-exam revision? How can you turn past paper revision into game-based learning? So I had some really good answers. I can talk about them a little bit, but in maths they had them points scored for past paper questions, 1 point for an easy question, 2 points for a medium level question, 3 points for a more difficult question. They were working in groups, and they had to decide then in their groups according to their own judgment of their own ability whether they would go for those 3 questions and then bank those points. Now that turned what might take an IGCSE maths class 40 minutes to do maybe 20 marks worth of maths questions, they were able to do almost 60 marks just because it became a challenge working against another group. So something like that, I think, is a much healthier way to approach it rather than think, oh, what's a good website I can use to keep the kids busy? Because they're all out there. And I think because it's brought into the frame in education now, kind of how you might describe them as evil market forces, because they're advertised as games, and so not always the best thing for the kids is going to be what they look at. They're going to look at what's the most fun, what's the most flashy and shiny. Whereas if you're a teacher, my teachers, I want them to use it in the right way first. If they can do what they've been doing and make it engaging rather than subscribe to something, then that's the take I'm trying to get, the take I have on it. But some of these products are really, really good as well. So I'm open to all of them.
Thank you. I think you highlighted a very important point, is not leading with a tool, but leading with learning and pedagogy and what's best for our individual learners. So I really appreciate that. I'm curious, the neuroscience behind games, we know gets kids engaged. They have increased dopamine and serotonin, all those things. And so we know that neurologically it engages our kids. I'm curious, as Dr. Vincent started to highlight, what real world connections do we see with game-based learning? Some of the critics might say we're just trying to, have fun in the classroom, and are they really learning? Is this deep learning? Do we see connections to the real world? So for those with that side of the argument, what might you say?
Yeah, maybe I'll take that first. Well, for me, I always like the quote or the principles on begin with the end in mind. I think we need to understand the purpose of us sending the kids to school is to connect them to the real world. It is to get them future ready. So instead of actually just relying on the tools, we should be actually looking at the objectives and how we could achieve that, instead of getting what is the in thing. I'd like to highlight an example that last week one of my friends asked us, why don't we have chatbot in our website? Chatbot is the in thing. So I asked him, why do we need chatbot for our website? He said, yeah, because it's the in thing. Everybody is doing it now. But I look at it, when, our students, our teachers, do they need chatbot? No. Parents, or the new parents, do they really want chatbot? They would prefer to speak to our principals to know us better. So the point here is that we need to actually look at the purpose of why we are doing certain things. As for the real-world connections, it's very important. One of the areas that we actually focus on is financial intelligence. As Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, said, most schools has forgot that financial education is equally important in schools. So for us, we will try to actually get our students and teachers to learn about financial intelligence. But frankly, financial intelligence is very boring. There's a lot of dry terms there. So we have to actually a lot more proactive in terms of working out the activities with game-based learning as well in the co-curricular activities that we have. We even organize workshops for financial intelligence. Recently, for example, we had a workshop using the cash flow board game. By using the board game, the students will learn and have fun about, what is actually income when they actually get the paper money, when they actually pay expenses. They also learn about the good assets and the bad assets. So from there, they also learn about the passive income and how to get out of the rat race. Another real-world connection that is important for us is about the giving back mindset. It's sad for me when we see always that there are students that's going around town to actually beg for donations for their schools. So for us, we actually have a program on Entrepreneurs Day and Philanthropy Day, where on the Entrepreneurs Day, this connect them to the real world, where they will learn about costs, about how to get profit when they're actually doing their sales in a charity bazaar for the school. At the same time, very important is that the profit that they gain from the Entrepreneur Day will be used for our Philanthropy Day, where we will actually go to help those in needs, whether it's the Spastic Center, whether it's Orang Alisli Kampung and so forth, where the students will learn it is from their own hard sweat money, profit that they have obtained, and they could use that to help the others as well. So we hope to bring more of these real-world connections to the students. Thank you.
I've got a stock market game I can share with you that really helps with teaching kids about, money. I'm going to share 5 things that I taught at a CPD recently at the university. In game-based learning, you don't need a game. You don't need a software to do this. You can just use a spreadsheet, a piece of paper, and you're totally done. The principles of game-based learning are so fundamental that it's silly and easy. So let's see. Number 1, every game is hyper clear about the rules. You don't get to break the rules, right? You do A, you get A. You do B, you get B. It's super clear. And that's why we like games. There's a degree of consistency. And that's why game breakers love games, because you can find the loopholes in it as well. But the consistency and the clarity of the rules is one huge aspect of games. The second one is there's a clear endpoint. I do a few things, I get A. I do a few more things, I get B. Now, this one's a bit dangerous. It's helpful in the short run when you design a game for your kids. Like, okay, kids, if all of you get a total of 50 points in this class from the Kahoot game, then we're going to go have donuts tomorrow or something. It's nice to get a certain degree of clarity, but be careful about developing that sort of a short-term thinking, instant gratification mindset. But it's very, very useful. Just to get them hooked onto it. The other thing that games do very well is rapid feedback. I mean, if any of you are Candy Crush people, that's rapid, really rapid feedback. And along with that, it's also early leveling. So there's incredible amounts of rewards that happen. You start a new game on your phone and the first 5 levels are silly easy. And then after that, it becomes ridiculously hard. But by then, you're already hooked and you're done. So whenever you design a game in your classroom, make the first 5 levels really easy. Get the kids hooked in first, and then ramp it up a little bit after. It's like teaching your kids how to write an essay. Okay, if you write a good 20-word essay, we're going to start that good 20 words first, then a good 50 words, then a good 75 words. And by the time you get the 100 words, they're in the pattern and the process, and they're already hooked. The other one, celebrate successes. We seem to only celebrate successes like once a year, like the end of the year, or for some cases, twice a year. And we think that's good enough. But in games, it is non-stop. It just doesn't stop. So when you design a game, celebrate successes. Do it in a mid-weekly level. So let's say you have 3 classes a week with that class. Celebrate successes midweek if you have to, at the early stages, and then shift it down to like once a week celebration. Like, let's say you meet them Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as you begin your game with them. Okay, everybody who answers this amazing answer a question, you're going to get points. Okay, at the midweek, look, this person went to level 1, and let's give him a pencil or something like that. Make him happy. The last thing that games in game designs really do well is they encourage mistakes. They really encourage you to mess up and then try again. Oh, I got killed by the dragon. It's okay. Try again with a different part of your team. No worries. You can try it again anyway. And then you still get XP out of it. And We should be encouraging that. But in our classrooms, you give a kid a D and they were like, no, I don't want to do this ever again. So when you design your games, you don't need software. Number one rule is start with the concepts first. Get yourself out a piece of paper. Get yourself a spreadsheet. Start there. I talk too long. Don't start with the software. Just start real simple. And it's going to be super fun.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was just wondering when we would come out. It's not reliant on technology, right? We can have game-based learning without the use of technology. When you were out and riding your bike, I'm sure you were playing games with your friends, right? As many of us were before we had our tech with us. So I really appreciate that. Would you like to share some maybe teaching and learning practices that you've seen over the years and maybe how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, sure. So just to touch on this, the cash flow game, is that for the children's version or the adult version they're playing?
We were using the adult version, but we actually improvised it ourselves.
These games are great, especially if you're doing, maybe we typically do something like that in a morals lesson, and there's another entrepreneur group program where they work on something for weeks together to build their own company and finding out what marketing strategies work, and it's all automated, it's all gamified. It's great. For us, as I'm going to touch on a little bit on the link between game-based learning and the real world. We talked about skills, financial skills, but the reason why it works for me is because, and one of the rules, kind of how Mr. Vincent described, is that if you give children or people levels where they can move up to the next level, that's enough of motivation alone, without the rewards, without the anything. Sometimes people just like to have the status of being at a certain level. So there's a really popular program now called Rockstar, Times Tables Rockstars. Most schools use it because it's great. The best thing about it is that parents can track where their child is weak in a certain multiplication table. Great for younger kids. But it's not like they get any money or a pajama party for their class if they do well. They just get the next status of rock god or whatever the one is. And that in karate you get different belts. It's in golf, which I love, you get a different handicap. In real life, you get a different position. In finance, you get more money. These are all versions of levels that people want to improve on where they are right there. And just involving that in any class is great. Doesn't have to be to the detriment of anyone else. You don't have to publicly display this person's up here, this person's down there. As long as that person knows what level they're at, then it's working. That alone is enough motivation sometimes. As I've seen it progress from my own teaching to how it is now, definitely more, for me, I feel like we've got enough game-based learning at the moment, especially in my school with what we used another thing called EdShed, which is great for spelling and grammar. But for me, as I touched on it before, it's the danger is just subscribing to something and thinking, okay, that's it, we're done, that's the game-based learning, rather than just taking why does that work and putting it into your classes now. So what I do with teachers, I'd hate to walk into a classroom, see the teacher just sat at the desk and then the kids on some type of program. It has a great place for me. The perfect use of something like that is if it's a cover class. If there's no one, the teacher's not there, if the teacher wasn't able to leave decent cover work, then one of these programs could be good. But the great and best way of using it is if the children are in groups, they're competing against each other, and it's teacher-led, and you have different stations. That's timeless. That's going to be great in 100 years. That was great 100 years ago. That's, I think, is the best way. And great teachers, they do that consistently. Not every class. I mean, I was a math teacher. Sometimes the kids will have to sit there and learn a technique and practice the technique, but how you get them to consolidate it, how you introduce something, games really come into that's where they're the best tactic, I think.
Thanks, David. I hear themes of collaboration. I hear themes of deeper learning. I hear themes of taking risks, all really things we want our learners to experience. And it's powerful that games can be a part of that. But absolutely, it is important that we lead with learning. We want to know our students are learning, whatever methods that we are working with. So that leads us into our data-driven instructional practices. We have seen success in games providing powerful data to drive our instructional practices. So at OIS, we have a big emphasis on blended learning strategies, which came in handy when we had to move into remote learning, as everybody did. One way our teachers use that is by differentiating practices. So students that might need remedial or students that might be gifted, they're able to either catch them up or push them further in these groups. And games play a big part, a big role in that. I'm curious from my panel, how does the use of data-driven instruction enable teachers to adapt their teaching strategies to the needs of specific students? So if you can think of maybe some strategies that your school uses or that you have seen work in schools that you've worked with in the past.
So actually, I wanted to add one little thing to the last one. You don't only have to use games on subject material. It could be on, let's just say you want your kids to bring their homework to school or bring their homework because they're just not handing in their homework for some reason. You could design a game just around that specific skill. It doesn't have to be about math, English, science, whatever it is. Games are a technique, and like any technique, you apply them exactly where you need them. So in my biology class, I didn't have trouble with kids getting excited about biology. I had trouble with the kids not bringing their homework in, so I designed a game specifically around them doing their homework. And that also leads into data-driven instruction. We are very big on data. There's a model called the 7C model. The 7C structure is a survey created by Tripod Education in the US. And essentially they ask the kids 7 Cs. Does my teacher confer much? Does he have good classroom management? Was my classroom experience very collaborative? It asks 7 key pedagogical areas. And each child in the school shares their classroom experience of every class they have every 6 months. And so we use this data and we share it with our teachers directly. And I say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, look, this is what you think you did, because they'll do a self-assessment of themselves, and then this is what your students think. Now, what can we do to support each other? I'm using this example to describe the process of classroom observation, which usually ends up in an argument. I think you're a terrible teacher because you're not letting your kids talk too much. I mean, I know I'm using bad words here, but that's what they hear anyway. And then you end up with this horrible opinion argument between both of us. But if I sit down and say, look, this is your score, this is your student's score, and this is how they scored you, well, how can I support you to really succeed? The whole narrative changes because we're not arguing about opinions anymore. We're just looking at a number, and now my role doesn't become one of judgment, but one where I'm supporting you to succeed. When we use objective data like this, we are specific, we can enable collaboration, we can enable recognition, we have clarity of success. So I tell my teachers, you need to get past this point to be considered a decent teacher. You need to get past this point to be considered an excellent teacher. And we have just like the rules in games, we have no misconception about where that line is because we were clear at the beginning. And I'm not doing the rating in the first place. Yeah, that's my feedback there.
Well, for us, one of the key areas that we'd like to look at for data is actually how could we actually use data to encourage actually positive behavior. I think for us as a human being, we are very quick to point out any negative behavior as well as also look into disciplines. But we want to actually encourage a lot more all the good things that the students are doing. One of the things that we are doing is also awarding merit points, for example, to the students. And with all this, the data is actually available not just for the teachers or the students. The parents also could have actually access to the data as well. So the key is that we want to work with the parents also to encourage all the good positive behavior that the kids are doing. Even in the primary school, we couple that with game-based learning as well with a project under the Rise to Excellence. So of course, data is important. Even recently, our teachers actually use data. Thanks to ChatGPT, they were able to actually use it with Python programming and able to study correlation between subjects, some correlations as well between the students' behavior versus the performance. So data is beyond just looking at how good the students are. All our data are actually in the shared drive, as many of you all have. And what is important is that we can use that to actually pair the weaker students with the stronger students as well in the classes, in the different subjects, and also probably assign different assignments based on their capabilities. Thank you.
So with regards to data, as I spoke to Jessica earlier, I hadn't really thought about it much before today, but all the idea of this is that you guys can hear what we are sharing, what we do in our schools. So I'll just talk about what we do with data and what my job is with reference to data. So for early years, they actually collect a lot more data than the rest of the year groups. Subject teachers, obviously, they have to do a lot of work with regards to tracking, scoring. But for early years, they do literacy, maths, physical, and emotional communication, and I can't remember the other one, but it's a lot of data for them to sit down and actually have to fill in. Are they doing it? Are they approaching doing it? Are they not doing it? Are they excelling in that? In a spreadsheet that we have, and it's color-coded, I can quickly flick through. I have a meeting with the teachers in the relevant departments twice every half term to just go through this at the end of a staff meeting, so it's pretty quick. And primary, they have English, Maths and Science, tracking all the learning objectives from Cambridge, and then secondary, which is my background, and this is, for me, that's, I think, pretty standard. It's how we did it back in the UK as well for primary and early years. But for secondary, I'm not sure how it's done in all the other schools. But what we do is we use target grades. So that's our way of tracking whether a child is meeting what they're supposed to be doing. And then if they're not at their target grade, that's when we take action and step in and say, what's happening? Why aren't they meeting the grade that they're supposed to be getting? And teachers will be able to give a full breakdown of their assessments, where the grade came from. So if it's projects and assessments, if homework comes into it, unit tests, end of term tests and stuff like that, they can actually see exactly where the child, where that grade came from. And for IGCSE, which for me is the most important time to track, we track past papers. So for example, in maths, you would do, starting December, you would track how they did once per week. They do a past paper. Are they at their target grade? And you can have a nice spreadsheet of the class then. Hopefully there's a lot of greens. Sometimes there's yellows, sometimes there's reds. If there's a red, then that's where the teacher steps in. If I have to come in, if the child isn't doing enough work at home or they're underperforming, that's where I come in and do something about it. If it's primary, you can use it to, and also doing it across the subjects, you can take your 10s and 11s out of registration in the morning then and give them extra of a subject. If you see that as a whole they're all underperforming in that subject. In primary, you can use it to decide what your start of the day is going to look like. Maybe you'll do a quick maths problem every day in the morning, after lunch as well, if you see that a lot of them are struggling in maths from the data. If particular with the foreign students, if a lot of them are read for that, is able to solve worded problems. And that tells us that they've got to have some help with their EAL teacher to go over some of the worded maths problems, maybe help them with keywords. We've used it where teachers will give a list of keywords, they give it to the EAL teachers then and go through it. All of this we only would know because communication between those teachers might not be great. It only gets noticed because I see this person obviously can't do this. What are we going to do about it? And we have a discussion. So for me, it's a bit of a pain for the teachers, I know, but if it's the best way of highlighting where there's an issue, then I see it as invaluable, especially coming new to this kind of position where I was on the other end tracking all the data, thinking, God, no one's looking at this but me. But as a principal now, I see if I have all that data, it's great, and I see the use in it. But again, it's a fine line between getting teachers to do so much and not using it. If I'm asking them to do it, it means I use it and they see me using it. We have discussions about it. So teachers are happy to do it then if they see the use in it.
Thank you. This is a really powerful discussion because as principals, often our head can be more in the data, right? Because teachers are boots on the ground in the classroom, delivering instruction. I think it's interesting in the U.S. curriculum, we have a middle school and a high school, and we don't combine our secondary. And one thing I find, I'm the principal of the middle school and high school, and one thing I find is that those middle years end up being a time of building a lot of social skills so that they can be successful when they enter high school. So I'm always curious as well about gathering data that's maybe non-academic data. Turning in homework assignments or being responsible decision makers. We spend a lot of time in middle school developing those skills. What I'm curious about, and this may be our last question, what I'm curious about is how do you find when we gather that data, how does it provide opportunities for your teachers to really personalize the learning experience for their students? So oftentimes we might find groups that are lagging, but sometimes it might be one student, and that student might be gifted or they may be struggling. So how does this data provide that opportunity for your teachers to deliver personalized instructional practices? And maybe some examples.
You want to start? Go ahead. Okay. So I'd actually challenge the idea of measuring static data. I had this conversation maybe about 2 years ago with my staff. We saw a couple of students who were sitting at D, or maybe what you would call a D, because in the IB we'd call it a 2 or 3. And we're like, okay, well, what's their target supposed to be? And some people are like, oh, it should be 2 to 4. Somebody else said, no, 2 to 5. Somebody else said, no, 2 to 3. And we're really asking, well, okay, hold on a second. We have the N bit done, which is percentage of students that manage to hit target. That's easy calculation. But none of us know what the target should be. And this is wrong. And then we started having a conversation, are we measuring the wrong thing? And we started asking ourselves, should we be measuring static grades, or should we be measuring growth? And how do we measure growth? So we started on that conversation about growth. And of course, it's a lot easier to jump a grade at 1 than it is to jump a grade at 7 out of 8. Going from 7 to 8 is pretty tough compared to 1 to 2. And so we designed a system where all of our children, we typically measure growth. We don't look so much at grades anymore. We measure and reward and recognize growth, and we inform our teachers the conversation is growth, not where you currently stand. Because growth is it's more encouraging, it's less judgmental, and it's more inspirational to our students. I think the obvious things to apply would come over here. Like if you have a child that's sitting on the 1-2 spectrum and his growth rate, he needs to grow, the kind of instruction that you need to give him is, A, it's going to be motivational. B, it's going to be on the basic techniques, the basic content, or maybe even going back a section. If you're having a child sitting in the middle ground, you're beginning to enter him into the more advanced techniques, so on and so forth, at the higher levels. I mean, when you split it up, it becomes quite obvious. But what I really wanted to point out was, if you only look at where they currently stand, and then you just point with a finger where they need to be, I think we're missing the point here, because where we think that they should be may not be where they want to be. Now, the other thing that some of my teachers suggested to do was, why don't we let them choose their own goals? Pros and cons, there are dangers to this approach as well, because a child can overreach and disappoint himself, or underreach and really lose out on his potential. So a bit of caution on that. So far, the technique that I've seen works really best is, as educators, we understand the difficulty of the rubric based on our years of experience, and we said, in 1 quarter, every child at a 1 has to increase by 1 point, something like that. If they are at a 4, we expect them to increase by 1 point in 6 months at a minimum. And then we measure the entire class and we say, did all of our class grow at the desired rate that we set for them in that sort of the different brackets? We have 3 brackets for them. That's how we do it.
Right. To me, first, technology, especially since Google 25 years ago, has been a game changer to imparting knowledge, because anyone can Google for any knowledge that they want. And definitely AIs and data insights were able to enhance that personalized learning on imparting knowledge. However, I think we need to actually go beyond that in terms of imparting knowledge. We need to go beyond to include attitude and skills. I read the book AI 2041 by Kai-Fu Lee, who is one of the key gurus for AI. One of the stories they had about twin sparrow, whereby there was a pair of twins. The elder twins was given a fully AI assistance to do personalized learning. The AI will recognize what are the areas that the child loves to do and will help him to become an expert in that area. The other twins was given human teachers who will help to guide the AI assistants on the areas that he thinks the child needs to learn. So as they grow up, the elder twin, who has fully on AI assistance, became the subject experts in his area of interest. He's very good in his area. However, he's not good in other areas. That include the soft skills. He's not able to get along with people when it comes to collaborations, teamwork, and so forth. He also lacked the skills and knowledge in other areas that is not his subject experts. So the weakness of the fully AI assistants, as the stories highlighted, there's a need for human interventions. It is important for the teachers to stimulate the soft skills among the students, to actually embrace and teach social emotional intelligence to the kids, emphasize on values and attitude. So I think the key thing about personalized learning, the next game changers that I hope to see, is how we could use it to help cultivate the right skills as well as the right job skills for our kids so that they will be future ready.
I touched on the uses of the data to personalize learning. So imagine you're a year 3 homeroom primary teacher and you've been tracking your maths across the year. Say it's about a term, you might have come across number bonds and place value, multiplying by 100, dividing by 100. Maybe during 2 topics. So you've had twice to go through. So they might not get it the first time. Some kids are amazing. They get it the first time, it's green. Then the second time, most of them will get it. There's some children who still don't get it. Okay? Now, you're not going to go back over that again until maybe the end of the year when you have time to go back over those topics that need redoing. The personalized learning part comes in then with the teacher seeing, okay, they're struggling with this and they need to do some extra practice. That's when you have a communication with the parents and say, look, they need to do some more of this. Here's some more questions. Would you mind going through it with them? Or you might give them some questions yourself for them to do in class at the start of the day. And this is common sense. A great teacher will just have that in mind, but without tracking it, you'll miss so many children and so many things where it could have been so easy to just there and then sort it out and give them a personalized piece of work. If it was some type of, like I said, the problem, worded problem questions, they might have a better English-speaking parent or an EAL teacher to help them. Again, that's personalized. You're spotting an issue and you're dealing with it. If it's a secondary child, they might be doing a topic. They might be doing electrolysis in chemistry or something like that. They've done some type of topical question revision exercise, maybe 3 months before their IGCSE exam. They have a terrible grade in that little exercise that they've done. You've tracked it. You can say, you don't know this, you need to revise this topic and then do this and give it back to me. That's the use of data for me at a teacher level. And then at my level, I'm kind of just ensuring that teachers are, one, filling it in. And if I see red, then I say, what are you doing about this? And if they're not sure, then I can help them. But that's where it comes in. Again, I talked about the whole class. If it's a subject issue, they might have extra in that. Science tends to be one subject that they're always trying to rush to finish before checkpoint or IGCSE, so they typically have extra sessions of that. Maths as well, which is scored quite highly in Malaysia, so it's just a difficult subject, especially additional maths. So the tracking helps individualize learning that way best for me, teaching-wise.
Thank you. And just to add on and zoom out just a little bit more, I appreciate that the topic of SEL was brought up because we aren't that far out of COVID and we're still dealing with a lot of the ramifications of our students. So I want to highlight one piece of data we've used at OIS is our pastoral care department delivers several surveys to our students a year and then also tracks visits to the pastoral care office. And that data informs assemblies that may take place or our homeroom topics that are discussed with our students. And we've seen that highly successful in providing for their social emotional because we do know that if our students are not feeling safe and secure at home or school, they're not going to learn their maths. And so it really is a critical aspect as schools as we think about caring for our students holistically. I would like to thank my panel today. It's been a pleasure moderating with you today, and I appreciate the deep discussion and hope we can continue this at a future conference. Thank you all.